Let's look at expectations, hope, reaction formation, and the dynamics between a healthy victim and the narcissist. And that victim was me. So my expectations, well, they were for connection. I desired that the relationship could fulfill my needs. I believed her affection would prove genuine. And even though during those first 6 months there were many red flags that I ignored, um, I still had this desire that it was true. So from a behaviour point of view, I ended up seeking validation from my ex, which just reinforced my dependence on her. And the now sort of hyper cathected love bombing phase that we're going through, well, I internalised that affection as proof of my worth. So let's look at the reaction formation in here. Well, I doubted my worth when their affection fluctuated, which sort of led me to have diminished self-esteem. Plus then, let's look at the inversion in the narcissist. Well, I felt threatened and reacted defensively whenever admiration was not reciprocated, and this creates a cycle of insecurity because their projections onto us of blame and shifting guilt and shame makes us then elicit guilt within us, in which we sort of plead our self-worth, which creates this cycle of shame, projection and introjection. Now into my pushes inside of me, the pushes and pulls that we all feel. Except we tend to think of the push and pull dynamics within the narcissist. We need to understand the push and pull dynamics within ourselves. So my libidinal push, well, I held on to the belief that she was capable of change and would eventually recognise my self-worth. And this is behaviour dependent. So I need to idealise the narcissist, projecting my hopes for change onto them. And now this becomes internalisation dependent. So I must now internalise this idealisation as a means to justify my emotional investment. So how did I experience that? In an inverted sense? Well, I experienced increased self-doubt when she failed to idealise me in return, leading to further cathexis on the relationship, but in a negative sense. So we project that out. And this then causes the narcissist, in an inverted sense, to feel inadequate. And they overcompensate for this by devalue. So I was devalued, and this reinforces their own insecurities and perpetuates the cycle. However, I have this libidinal pull, a pull for stability. So let's look at how that developed in me. So I envisioned a future where the relationship stabilised, leading to mutual love and respect, even as the devaluation began to surface around 6 months in. However, it was behaviour dependent. I had to work hard to maintain harmony, and it was always at the cost of my own needs and those of my children. So I internalised the hope for stability as a reason to overlook the red flags. So let's look at the inversions again. Well, I felt anxiety about stability as she began to withdraw, which increased the pressure to conform to her ideals. And her inversion, well, she experienced instability in her self-image and became more erratic as they feared losing my admiration, reinforcing their emotional volatility, often saying things to me like, "Don't you ever leave me, sure you won't." So let's look at my expectations through that period. Well, I was expecting fulfillment. I thought that by loving her, I could inspire positive change and emotional growth, despite the ongoing devaluation and intermittent reinforcement from 6 months to 4.5 years. But again, this is behaviour dependent. So I engaged in caretaking behaviours to elicit change in her. So this means that I internalized the belief that my love was the catalyst for any of her transformation. So again, let's look at the inversions and see what's really going on. In reality, I felt disheartened and inadequate when my love did not lead to the expected change, which caused me to question my own value. And her inverted reasonings, well, they felt threatened when I began asserting my own needs, leading to increased defensive behaviours and a closed loop of blame. I also had an expectation for consistency. So that means, despite all the red flags, I hoped that clarity would sort of emerge and that she would prove dependable, even as the relationship increasingly enmeshed in my life, including family, friends, and work. So again, this is behaviour dependent. This created me to attempt to create consistency through reassurance seeking behaviours. And this is internalisation dependent. I internalised the expectation of consistency as a core belief about relationships. So let's look at the inversions again. I experienced confusion and self doubt when her behaviour was inconsistent, which led to an internal struggle. And her inversions, the real reasons, they felt their control slipping and reacted with anger or blame when faced with challenges to their facade, perpetuating a cycle of defensiveness. I had an expectation of loyalty. I believed that expressing loyalty would secure love and deepen the connection, even as I became increasingly enmeshed in her life and their destructive behaviours. And again, this is behaviour dependent, meaning I engaged in self-sacrificing behaviours to demonstrate commitment. Internalisation dependent, which means I internalise loyalty as a measure of my worth in the relationship. So let's look at the inversions. What was really going on? I concealed genuine feelings of disappointment, leading to internal conflict and resentment, which reinforced my doubts. And for her, well, they felt guilty or insecure when their charm failed to elicit the desired admiration, prompting further manipulation and a cycle of self-deception. And lastly, I had a desire for change. I hoped that she would change and become the partner that I desired, despite my growing awareness of their intent to destroy my sense of self. The behaviour dependent, well, I engaged in efforts to facilitate change through emotional support. I internalised the belief that my support was crucial for her transformation. So lastly, let's look at the inversion. In reality, I felt hopeless and frustrated when change did not occur, leading to further self-doubt and emotional withdrawal and fragmentation. And her truth, well, she became increasingly defensive if their true self was threatened or questioned, leading to further projection of blame onto me and reinforcing a closed loop of denial. If you've made it this far, well done. And let me know if you did. If you haven't watched my analogy about the computer I put out yesterday, go back and watch it. Because this is the exact same thing, but it's looking at our expectations, hope, and our internalizations throughout that journey. Except it's my journey. It's my exact journey. Peace out. Loads of love.